Welcome back, Empowered Healers, to another sacred episode of the Empowered Healers podcast. I'm your host, Songbird Grandmother. This is the space where we unravel the mysteries of the healer's path, awaken ancient gifts, and step into our spiritual leadership with clarity and integrity. Today's conversation is one that every intuitive healer must understand. The difference between intuition, ego, and trauma response. Because, let's be honest, we've all asked ourselves at some point, is this my intuition or is this just fear talking? Is this my soul speaking or is this just my survival brain reacting? If you've ever wondered how to tell the difference, this episode is for you. So welcome. And we're continuing our month of September. We're recording this right after the blood moon eclipse, the full moon, the pow of all pows, a very powerful, explosive, expansive, destructive moon. And how fitting it is for the times that we're living in. We are right smack in the middle of eclipse season. We have a trifecta of all moons and changes happening on the 21st with the equinox, new moon, and solar eclipse. So if you're catching this episode in this time frame, you're definitely feeling the after effects, the full effects. And if you're listening to this maybe even years down the road, you may be feeling these energies in your own life. Eclipses are about transformation, change, moving from one destination to the other. The atmosphere, Mother Earth, the cosmos align for us to experience a shift, a change. And the ancestors said this can be your greatest fortune or misfortune. And that's why they were so intrigued by the power of eclipses. If you are catching this at this time, it is so important for you to rest, drink lots of water, stay in a high vibration, even if everything around you is collapsing, as it may be. I know lots of explosive energies are happening in our world right now. A lot of fear, a lot of chaos, and a lot of change. And so today we're going to talk about something that's very pivotal when you are in change and transformation, and especially for these times that we are living in and through, the intuition. And this is a vast subject. There really is no quick, easy way to explain intuition because it comes from something so primitive, so instinctual within our being. And the more we're in tune with it, the more we are able to understand it and walk with it. The more disconnected we are from intuition, the harder it is to listen. Now, intuition is the voice of truth. It's a calm, grounded, and neutral voice. It may bring a sense of expansion in your chest, goosebumps on your skin, or just a quiet knowing that feels steady and loving. Intuition doesn't argue, it doesn't convince, it simply is. And when you act on intuition, even if it challenges you, there is peace underneath the decision. Sometimes our intuition will speak and it's not the answer we want. And yet there will be a feeling of righteousness. There will be a feeling of, yes, this is what I need at this time. Yes, that feels right, even if it makes my voice shake. That's intuition. Ego is the voice of protection. Ego often disguises itself as intuition because it wants to keep you safe in familiar territory. It may sound logical, persuasive, or even spiritual, but its tone is often urgent, rigid, or self-centered. That's the key, is if it's urgent, rigid, or self-centered. Ego will say things like, if I do this, I'll finally be enough. Or if I don't, I'll look foolish. It's always judging and comparing. It's future focused, driven by image, fear, or comparison. Very common ego is, well, I'm not getting any younger, so I should do this. Everybody else is doing this. And as a healer, if you follow that voice of ego, you will get lost in the crowd because intuition will lead you down paths that ego will never lead you down. Your ego will never say, oh, I think I should serve a grander purpose and become a healer. Rather, ego would say something like this: if I'm going to become a healer, then I better be rich, famous, the best looking. I better, live like a queen or a king. That's ego. Ego is easily tricked. Intuition is never tricked. So we talk about trickster spirits later. You'll understand why intuition development is so important, especially if you are an intuitive person. And the last one is trauma response. Trauma response is the voice of survival. This is something that happened very long ago, and it is also a control mechanism. Trauma responses are the most sneaky because they come from the body's memory. It's like a muscle memory. It's just something that you've always done that feels comfortable, natural, and is a reaction. It's a past wound is triggered, and suddenly you feel the impulse to run, to hide, to people please, or shut down. The trauma voice can feel overwhelming. It's a flood of fear, shame, or urgency. It's not about the present. It's about a past wound reactivated in the now. So it's reactivated in the now, coming from the past. So intuition is very present. Ego is very futuristic. Trauma is very past. It's the thing that doesn't let you get to the present and will stop you every single time you feel something that triggers survival. And if you look at mainstream media, you look at most of social media at this point, it is a trauma response. It's a lot of people talking. And when they start saying, well, in the past, this happened, or, remember the housing market crash, or remember, what your ancestors went through in these horrific conditions. Remember, World War II. Remember, those are all past scenarios. And the thing is that the past certainly does repeat itself. The patterns of suffering are cyclical. That's why there's nothing new under the sun, because everything goes in cycles. However, the grandest opportunity we have on this planet is to change the response. And changing the response is living through your intuition. Because the intuition knows all, sees all, and can move you in the highest direction if you listen. So let's talk about how to recognize the difference. How do you tell these voices apart? And that's one of the biggest parts of intuition development is asking yourself, is this intuition? Is this ego? Is this trauma? When you're in the middle of a trigger, of a trauma response, is the hardest moment to know what is going on. So oftentimes it's actually not until after the trigger that you may start thinking about it and say, oh my gosh, what was that? Oh, okay, that's what it was. But if you can, these are some keys recognizing the difference. Intuition feels like a quiet whisper. It's steady and consistent. Some people describe it just as I just knew. I just knew. That's intuition. And it's non-wavering. Intuition will tell you the same thing over and over and over and over again until you listen. Intuition, it feels like a quiet whisper, but it's a very strong and consistent energy. It will get louder at some points, but it never feels chaotic. It never feels chaotic. That's the first thing to remember. If you are feeling some kind of way, you know how people say that? I don't know, I just feel in some kind of way. Pay attention to what way you're feeling. Is it steady and consistent, or is it chaotic and crazy? Because your ego will feel like mental chatter, looping, trying to justify, it's trying to bargain, it's trying to convince you, it's a trickster, it's trying to negotiate. The ego is constantly negotiating. See, we need an ego though, because it is a protection. You can't live a life without an ego, because then you'd be like in floating land. Ego grounds you. And sometimes ego is doing its job, which is protecting you. And then sometimes it's overly protecting you. And sometimes it's just standing in your way. So you have to always look at your ego and say, okay, what is the difference between the mental chatter and just being steady and consistent? You know, one of the things about ego is that it likes to loop things. It likes to play things over and over and over and over again. And sometimes you'll notice that with people where they'll just keep repeating something over and over and over. And you're like, wow, is that what's running through your head all the time? It's just this chatter. Sometimes people have insomnia because they can't shut the ego off. And when you have a battle between ego and intuition, it's really hard to know which one is which, because ego is so loud sometimes and intuition is so quiet. But you have to pay attention to what is steady and consistent versus what is looping and chatty and like that 2-year-old trying to get your attention. And then, of course, trauma feels like a body reaction. It can be like racing heart, tight chest, numbness. It can even be like a panic attack. Trauma feels palpable. When you're in a trauma response, it is a nervous system response. It's very much in the body. It's not even in the mind as much as it is in the body. It's a lived experience, and it will control. Trauma will lead to control. They go hand in hand. If you have a trauma response, you will freeze most often, and you will try to control and dominate the situation. So those are the first steps to looking at when you're looking at intuition, ego, and trauma. And sometimes they get confused, like ego and trauma. And sometimes when you have a lot of trauma, you have a lot of ego. But on the other hand, a lot of empaths, when you have a lot of trauma, you have a lot of intuition, but you have to heal the trauma to really deepen that intuition. So when you think about you and your life and what you know about yourself, do an honest assessment, do an honest evaluation. Do I make decisions more from my intuition? Do I do it from ego? Or is everything I'm doing just a traumatic reaction? Then you want to ask yourself these reflection questions. When you're getting a message, does this message feel calm or frantic? Is it rooted in love or fear? Is my body relaxed or in fight or flight? Does this guidance expand me or contract me? Those are very important to ask. You might even want to write them down, because if you understand your intuition decisions versus your ego decisions versus your trauma decisions, it's life changing. It will change relationships. It will change how you react to things. It will change how you move and operate in the world. Would you rather move from chaos or calmness? Would you rather move from love or fear? Would you rather move from relaxation or fight or flight? Those are the things you have to ask yourself, because if you're moving and making decisions from fight or flight, you're always in stress. That's the hustle. That's the I got to do more. I've got to constantly be moving. If I'm not moving, I'm worthless. If, those constant reactions, when sometimes your intuition will say, rest, think about it, meditate on it, hydrate yourself, go to the river, go to the ocean, and your ego will say, oh, no, I've got to work. And it'll start chattering and doubting and confusing you. And then if it's trauma going on top of that, it's just a huge mess, because the trauma response will tighten you, contract you. You'll start reacting, and then, you say, oh, but if I don't work, then I'll be homeless. Then I won't be able to pay my bills. And then I won't, it'll go into a spiral. But, YouTube is saying that, everybody's going to be homeless and broke. And that's what those social medias can do for you. It can literally put you in fight or flight, chaos and fear. So you have to be real careful about what you watch and what you consume and how much of it, because if you're constantly in the loop of social media, it's a huge ego. I mean, just look at, the famous clock app, for example. That's a huge, vast egoic library. Most every video has some kind of dramatic music. It's stirring your mind. It's getting you into a fear reaction. It's triggering trauma. There's very few viral videos that actually calm and strengthen you, that build your intuition, that make you question the false reality. And if you think about it, that's not by accident. Why do certain videos go viral while others sit on a shelf? And the next part is healing and practices. So now that we've kind of went through these three core parts, what do we do with this awareness? Well, here are three practices to strengthen your discernment. That's a very important word, discernment. The ability to know what's right or wrong for you. So this is something I always tell people. I don't know how many people actually do it, because it does take I feel it takes a lot of meditation and practice and working on yourself, because most people are in a reaction mode. Most of our communication in this day and age is from reaction versus response. In the indigenous ways, it's response, not reaction. Responsibility is the ability to respond. It's not supposed to be a big heavy weight of you have to, but rather it's supposed to be an action of response. And that changes the whole energy of it when you understand that. So pausing before acting. Whenever you feel a strong impulse, you give yourself space. That's the first thing. Like you feel, and this requires that kind of meditation that I'm talking about, because the first thing you were that before you do that, it's stopping, breathing, and pausing. When somebody triggers you, it's breathing. It's intuition doesn't expire, but ego and trauma push urgency. This is why spiritual training often takes a long time. And people don't want to hear that because they want the 6-week shamanic course. But honestly, true spiritual training is pausing before acting. It's thinking before saying. It's saying less, listening more. And that's years, especially if you're in a trauma response. If you've been living your whole life in a trauma response or from ego, it's so hard to pause before acting. You see how I did that? Pause. And especially in the time of 30-second videos, 15-second videos, 1-second videos, people want the information immediately. They want it now. They don't want to have to wait. And part of spiritual training is pausing. It's actually taking a breath, or maybe 30 breaths, maybe 100 breaths. But knowing that when you actually do speak, when you actually do respond, you're not in an ego or trauma mindset, but rather a heart-centered, intuitive vibration. It's a totally different way of operating in the world. The next part is to do a body scan, to notice what is going on in your physical body. Are you feeling sensation? Are you getting red? Are you getting reactive? Some people, even when they get really upset, they break out in hives and rashes, and they have a physical reaction. So trauma speaks through the body, and you'll feel it immediately. Heart will raise, face will flush red, anger will rise up, grief, crying. Like sometimes when people have a trauma response, they cry. That's very much in the body. We see that a lot. I'll see that a lot on like YouTube or something, and someone will be talking about their life and they're living through these cycles and they're crying and they're reacting, and it's trauma. It's coming through the body. Intuition feels calm and expansive. It doesn't have a reaction. There's no physical sensation. It's more of a feeling of knowing. It can be very peaceful. It can be very fierce and strong. It can be very flowing. It just is. And that's harder sometimes for us to feel because it's a soft feeling versus a traumatic feeling. And even when you're crying from trauma versus your intuition, it's way different. When you're crying in a trauma response, versus like when something is moving through you, a beautiful, intuitive knowing, a remembrance, a feeling of power. It can also trigger a crying. It can trigger tears, but it's not dramatic. It's calming, it's cleansing, it's beautiful. It feels so precious. There's a difference. There's a difference. And the next thing is to get into meditation and ceremony. In this time and age, we need more meditation, more ceremony, more rituals, more connection to the great mystery, more connection to the spirit world, more connection to Mother Earth. I know most people in America are not connected to the spirit world. They're not connected to the earth. And they misuse and misunderstand what is sacred. And so when you create sacred time to clear the noise and reconnect with your higher self, this is the doorway to listening. Meditation is listening. Prayer is asking and doing. It's a very active process, whereas meditation is listening, it's receiving, it's quieting so that you can create that space to just be. I remember when I first moved to Sedona years ago, there was a meditation center near me. And so I'd walk to the meditation center, and there was the one, I didn't go to any of the meditations except for the silent meditation. It was 45 minutes of silence. And so the lady, she would sit down and say, hello, welcome. Are you guys ready? She'd ring a bell. We'd sit there for 45 minutes and meditate. And then at the end, she'd ring a bell and it was over. It was no talking at all. And everybody would walk out of those meditations and you could just see the peace and the stillness. And that's an advanced meditating group because it wasn't guided. It was just pure silence. And we probably just kept going, you know. It was, you're in a room full of people who'd been working on themselves. And it felt so clear. Nobody in that space was intrusive. They were all in their own self-responsibility and connecting to the higher source. And when we were all in that circle, it was like being out of this world. That's the only way I can say it. You're very grounded, but you're still like out of this world. And you could feel that nobody was in mind chatter, that we were just really just sitting there in the silence. And I love that. It was such a neat thing that was hard to find, actually. There wasn't many spaces like that. There aren't many spaces like that. But when you can find that and you can share it with others, it's even more precious. And this is partially why I have Meditation Monday, which has, been something I have done off and on. It's had many rebirths for over a decade at least. It keeps coming back. And now it's on YouTube. It's there for you. It's going to weave with the Empowered Healers podcast because I want to create spaces for those of you who are out in the world doing the hustle bustle, but wanting to work on yourself, wanting to go deeper, wanting to really become who you are. And in this day and age, we need more of that. We need all healers on deck. So, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that these tools help you to begin to separate the voices of intuition, ego, and trauma so that you can anchor into your truth. The more you practice discernment, the more natural it becomes to recognize your intuition. Remember, intuition is calm, loving, and clear. Ego tries to convince, trauma tries to protect. But your soul, your true self, is never confusing. It's always speaking with clarity and love. Your journey is not about silencing ego or trauma. It's about recognizing their voices, thanking them for what they've taught you, and choosing the path of intuition. If this resonated with you, then I invite you to take the next step and book your private session or ceremony. I help healers and visionaries like you clear the energetic imprints of trauma, quiet the ego, strengthen the voice of intuition, connect to the spirit world so that you can walk your path with confidence and clarity. And if you found value in today's session, please share it with another healer. Leave a review and like, share, and do all the good stuff, because your support helps spread this work and can invite more empowered healers into this very needed space at this very tumultuous time. Until next time, keep listening for the calm voice of love within you. I'm sending you all my love and blessings. Until we meet again, aho.